Please join me in welcoming our second student speaker. She is actually the parent of a student at St. Ignatius Preparatory, Sheryl Davis, speaking on I Am a Community Engineer.
Good morning. I brought some young people up with me, so they wanted to be up here. So, when I was a little girl, I can remember very vividly going to my mother one day being very upset about something. I don't remember what it was. And I went to her and I said, we got to do something. They did the wrong thing. We've got to fix it. And my mother said to me, which stays with me, and it was really the beginning of this path of becoming what I call a community engineer. She said to me, Sheryl, you can't change people. The only person you have control over is you. So you have to figure out what you can do that can help someone want to change. Because you can't create people, you can't change people's minds, you can't make them do anything. You only can do what you can do, and hopefully what you do makes a difference or makes someone want to make a difference. And that would be the beginning of me trying to figure out how do I make connections and bring people together and build bridges in a way that we can change what's going on. I started my career as an educator in a school with the Religious of the Sacred Heart. And the school was amazing, and everybody in that school knew that they were going to go to college and they were going to have amazing opportunities. But I was working in a neighborhood that was literally just blocks away, public housing, and people weren't even sure if they were going to live to graduate high school, let alone go to college. And I realized that there was this disconnect. As I was driving to work to this great place, I was passing through this neighborhood where I went to church, and I knew that the kids that I was teaching in kindergarten did not have the same opportunities as the fifth grader that I was working with. The kids in kindergarten, these boys were doing more on computers than high school students were. And I all of a sudden had this amazing guilt around being an African American woman working in a predominantly Caucasian school where just a few blocks away there were African American students who couldn't read and write, and what was I doing to give back, and how was I going to bring these two communities together, and how was I going to live with myself, right? And I realized in that moment that there was a way to bring those communities together, and I was able to do that. But I also realized that there are some things that were happening in the school that were not happening in that community. And it started with expectations. It started with this peace in the heart where, like I said, from day one, they knew they were going to college. Kindergartners, first graders, second graders, talking about what they wanted to be when they grew up. But in this other neighborhood, they weren't even expecting to grow up. So what was the expectation? What does success look like? How do we build that? And then even beyond that, when you think about exposure, these other kids had seen it. They knew what it looked like. They knew what it looked like for someone to have a job, to go to college. They could touch it. They could see it. They could experience it. These other kids were living in a community where people weren't living to be 18. People weren't having jobs. They weren't able to move forward. So how do you make this change? I was reading Mark 9 talks about this man brings his son to Jesus, and he wants Jesus to heal his son. And he says, if you can do anything, please do something. And Jesus says, with the believers, there is no if, right? And the man says, well, then I believe, but help me believe. And so that expectation is believing even when you got to believe beyond hope that it can happen. Like sometimes you have to help someone believe, and you do the exposure and you do the education and you do the equipping, because it's not just about exposing and seeing college, but how do I get to college? I can fill out the application, I can go through the process, I understand A through G, which is California requirements, but then what's the next thing, right? You get in, you get applied, you get in, you get accepted, but now how do I actually pay for college? How do I get to school? How do I pay for lunch? Where do I live? If we're not equipping, if we're not doing the whole piece, then it's still for naught. It's not until all those things happen that we are actually able to empower. There are these gaps, these bridges. How do we build these bridges? How do we help folks get to success? What does that look like? The power of opportunity and access. I brought these young people up here. They live in communities where police and folks in the neighborhood don't get along. They were charged this summer with bringing together the police and young people from their community. How do you do that? Do you know why we started that? Because at the beginning of January of this year, 4 young people were sitting in a car. And all 4 of them were shot and killed in that car. And this is why, for me, I have to do everything I can do, because when they come back to me and they say, out of that car, you knew all 4 of them, and 2 of them you had actually worked with. I have to be able to go to sleep at night knowing that I've done everything that I can do, and I have to go back to what my mother said. You can't make people do anything, but at least if I can offer that, if I can expect, if I can believe, if I can give them the tools, then at the end of it, at least my heart is broken, but at least I know that I've done all that I can do. Melody was asked when we went to Cleveland to talk about this program that we did this summer. Why do you think there's gun violence? Why do you think that people are joining gangs? Why do you think this happens? And she said, you know, poor people and people of color, sometimes we're invisible. And so sometimes people join gangs because then people see them and they care about them and they take them in and they support them. And people get guns because that gives them power. But opportunity and access to opportunity also gives power. And so I challenge everyone to think about, do you see everyone? Are you making that connection? Are you building that bridge? Because it's about the human bridges as well. It's about how we connect, how we see people, how we offer an opportunity. I challenge our privilege because we think that everybody has the same access and the same opportunity. Think about the expectations that you have. Everybody here, somebody is thinking and expecting that you're going to go on to be and do something amazing. You have an opportunity even being in this room. These young people, I was so grateful to be able to come here because they can come and they can be seen. You all can see them, but what's the next thing? How do we help and how do we make sure? So it's not just about volunteering. Sometimes it's just about seeing someone, saying hello, making that connection, helping move forward. It starts with expectations and then the other tools, but it is all about being the human bridge and making that connection and changing someone's life with just seeing them. Thank you.